Hello world, it's Friday. Welcome to Americana. I'm your host, Willie Montague. We cut through the noise, uncover the hidden agendas, and ask the questions they want you to. We are all about being real, relevant, and relational. So let's get into it. All right, today is actually going to be a very special episode. We're going to be diving into everything related to mental health, which is a very important topic to me, and I'm sure many of you out there. So we're going to be talking about breaking the stigma around mental health and community strength, and access to representation and, of course, solutions. And today we are joined with a very special guest, a good brother of mine, Calvin Ockletree. We've got a lot coming up, but you already know what time it is. Get the drum rolls ready. It's Willie's Take. You guys, this is the time where I get to have a little rant, and it's Friday, so we're going to conclude with a good rant. We say we love honesty, but we lie every day. We lie to our friends, we lie to our families, we lie to ourselves. We lie when we smile and say, I'm fine. We lie when we chase what we don't need. We lie when we hide our addictions behind filters and likes. Truth is heavy. Truth is messy. Truth exposes us. So we bury it. We cover it up with distractions, with work, with pleasure, with noise, and yet we wonder why we feel empty. It's not because life has no meaning. It's because we keep running from the truth that would make us free. And today we are joined with someone who has no problem helping a community to continue to thrive, to be free. Once again, my good friend, Calvin Ockletree, a renowned mental health advocate, as we dive into the conversation of breaking the stigma around mental health. Welcome to the show, Calvin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
All right, this is going to be a good show. And I want you guys to just sit back and really just start thinking about the things around mental health and how it is a stigma. Nearly 1 in 5 U.S. adults report living with a mental illness each year. But there has been some budget cuts centered around it, not just some, over $1 billion worth of budget cuts to programs that can help with this. But we're going to have a conversation today because we want people to realize you don't have to live in this place. So I'm turning it over to Calvin and say, what is the stigma and how would you say we need to move forward to break this stigma?
Well, in my personal opinion, there's a lot of historical and cultural reasons of why people may not want to join in to take the leap into saying, hey, I need help and I want to seek out therapy. Specifically speaking into the Black community, it can be seen as weak or you're crazy or that you need to just depend on prayer or we handle our struggles within. So we have to break that role of language and then the power of representation. We need people that look like us to actually take in these jobs, become therapists. I mean, if you, like you said, you like numbers. So if you look at the numbers, only 4% of the U.S. psychologists are Black. So we have to break through that stigma as well. We need more of our leaders to share their stories and say, hey, it's a safe place. You know, you can shop around for your therapist or psychologist, just like you can shop around for health insurance. So I would encourage all of the communities out there to do that.
You know, you mentioned safe space, which is important because you have to have a safe space. And then we're looking at the numbers. We're looking at $1 billion in cut. But let's look at this from an angle. If we cut all of these resources, that means people don't have really a safe place to go. So just let's zero in on that. What is considered a safe place? If someone's watching today and they're saying, I hear you, Calvin, but I need a safe space, where do I go? What would that look like to different people? If you can give a couple of options so people can say, hey, I do have one, I just didn't know that's what it looked like.
Okay. All right. Again, I'm gonna speak from a personal experience. I remember going on Google and trying to figure out where I can go. I ended up finding out about therapy for Black men, which literally is therapy for blackmen.com. Also, I'm a veteran, so I had to reach out to my veteran resource center to figure out where I needed to connect to, and they pointed me to the right offices. Also, look in your local communities on Facebook. So I'm a part of a Facebook group called Black Mental Health, and constantly people are posting federal opportunities, community opportunities, and personal ones, which I myself also run basically a Black men oriented group that I throw once a month here in Orlando. And I invite it out for free for people to come in. I mean, honestly, people also have mental health talks in barbershops. you know, so honestly, you have to do your research. But I just gave a few that you can actually reach out to.
You know, so should we really frame this as mental health goes and with public, is this a public health crisis rather than a political issue? Because if you look at all this, and we don't have to dive into the political side, because every time you turn around is someone has a mental disorder. This is what this person did this because they have a mental disorder. Or should people really see this as it is a public health crisis and not something to be politicized where people are taking advantage of a community that just wants to be heard and need to have representation, not, you know, put all over social media?
This definitely should be looked at as a public health crisis. It should be looked at the same as heart disease or cancer. Once you bring in the politics of it, you don't want mental health to become like a campaign rhetoric or talking points. This is something that's very important. If you leave it up to politics, you don't want it to end up locked into the top down or to where it's not available to those who already are struggling in the community and don't have access to it.
You know, as we're getting ready to take a quick commercial break, but it's so important that what you're talking about, we need safe spaces, and then we need to realize this is a public health crisis, and so many times it's politicized. I see it all over the news, and it bothers me because I know individuals like you that fight so much for advocacy about making sure you check your mental, even you checking on different people throughout the week is important. But when we get back, we're getting ready to take another quick commercial break, but we got Calvin with us. I don't want you to go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk about mental health and community strength. This is something very important because not only can you can't do it by yourself, you have to have a community to do it. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Americana. Social media land. I am so glad that you're sticking with us. Today is very special. As I mentioned, it is Youth Mental Health Day. And I want to ask you a question. How does that look to you? What is it that you think that you could do better in talking to the youth and young people of today? Is there someone in your life, a son or daughter, that really needs to have that conversation about their mental? And so put in the comments below and let's have that conversation. Let's not let it drop just because today is Youth Mental Health. Let's have that conversation all the way around because we want to see our youth thrive. And so for those out there that is understanding what this is, put on some green, go out there and represent today. Let's get back to the show. All right, you guys, welcome back. You are tuned into Americana, and we have with us Calvin, we've been talking about mental health, and just during the break, if you was with us, we were talking about the fact that today is Youth Mental Health Day. Youth mental health problems are rising fast. 45% of people aged 10 to 24 reported struggling in the past 2 years, yet many say their communities and schools fail to support them. Calvin, I want you really to just drive this one home, because if we have ages 10, as young as 10 to 24 saying, I don't have a community, where do I go? And now we're talking about youth, because which you know, I'm heavily involved in that area, and I find it alarming that so many people in the schools or at homes and communities feel like they have no place to go. So are schools and local communities being forced into roles they're unprepared for? Is that why there's no help? And should we find other alternatives without leaving our youth out there to fend for themselves?
Because when you mention youth, it often makes me think of school. So I can't stress enough that teachers aren't therapists, right? They already take on enough in their field alone. So schools should build that trust and safety, but not be forced to diagnose. So we need to have the proper professionals inside the schools to assist. Things are rolling in so fast, so quickly, when kids have access to phones and tablets, and we can't keep up, with what they're learning. And a lot of it is junk. I'll leave it at that. There's junk that they're feeding their brains. So we have to kind of either stay up with it or get ahead of that. And we have to have the proper professionals inside the school system.
It's important, because that's the part I see, even when we see like things that happen on the street or arrest or different as psychoses that happen with youth. So many times you'll find inexperienced officers or professionals. They're professionals in their field, but they're not professional necessarily with working with the youth in this area. So what would you say for that? Like, that people need to make sure they're trained, one, and not just going out and just jumping off. So as someone who is a mental health advocate, and what you see out there, what would you share for those that are probably watching that may be in a profession where it's not necessarily a thing that they do every day? What would you share with them, and some resources, as you and I both know about the mental health first aid, some resources that people can do to just get involved to make sure they have the information so that others are safeguarded?
So depending on where the viewers all are, whatever state you are, look on your local government website and look up mental health first aid. They have it for adults, and they also have it for youth. That is a big one. So anyone can become a mental health first aider. I'm a mental health first aider with adults and with youth, right? So that way you'll know how to catch the signs. You'll learn how to know if they're actually experiencing a crisis, and then what to do. Also, you have the crisis text line, which you just text hello to 741-741. You also have the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline that you can call. You can dial 988 as well. Those are 3 resources that you can utilize.
And that's important, because you need resources. And this is what, as I just mentioned, not too political, but when the community strength is weak, because that's what we're seeing, the community strength is getting weak. Do you feel like people turn to politics, or should I put it this way, not just politics, but do they just turn to social media? And you probably see it. You can look down feeds and see so many people saying, hey, what should I do? Or I have this relationship issue, I have this going on. And it's like people, instead of actually getting strength where it needs to come from, they're going to people on the other side who are also struggling, and they're basically giving them some crazy advice. So what do you think about that? Like, are people just turning now to anywhere to get help? And how would you say, how will we get them back to where they need to be to get focused?
Well, honestly, I would kind of say that it's both. So it's dependent on politics and also the community. It's dependent on politics because we need people to push the legislation and push the laws out there and the funding out there so that we can have resources. And then it's also on the community's back, because in every community, you need, like I mentioned earlier, the leaders that need to come out and say, hey, this is my story, something that can become relatable. That's what I'm doing with my company, Life is Better LLC, where we're empowering mental health wellness through expression. So you need people in the community that can resonate with people, again, that look like them or have experiences like them, like with veterans. You know, when I need to seek therapy for things that I experienced in the military, I go to the veterans offices and I get help and assistance there. So it's honestly, it's not one or the other. It's both. You need politics and you need the community so that we can have a strong infrastructure and a strong foundation to attack this crisis.
So with you, with Life is Butter, you just mentioned that. So let's go back to that. Share a little bit about that and some things that you have done in the community where it's like you've had to wake people up in that. So just give a little bit of a background about Life is Butter and what would that mean to others who need to experience it and your testimony of how you come to Life is Butter.
Okay. So Life is Butter LLC, a lot of people, they actually kind of look at it weird, like Life is Butter. Butter is my nickname that was given to me by my grandmother and my mom upon birth. And so how I got into mental health and understood that it was important is me turning inwardly and seeing that there was so much that I needed to change, dealing with childhood traumas, dealing with trauma with being in the military, and just also being in America while being Black, right? So I said, okay, well, I'm also an author. So I wanted to create a hub to where I could put everything that I'm interested in and that I like all in one. So I'm an author, so I write poetry. And a lot of my poetry is focused on mental health and the struggles that I went through growing up. So you have the writing portion of it. And then you have the clothing portion of it to where I put positive messages on shirts. A lot of kids these days, they're finding, you know, things that they like on TikTok, Instagram, and you're able to sell shirts. So I'm like, well, let's push a positive message and put those on shirts and release that so people can see that around the community as they're going around. And then reading and making sure that I am putting information out there, real, raw experiences like suicide. I have a book about suicide called Thoughts of Suicide, to where any age can pick that book up, right? And they can read that and say, okay, I'm not alone. A lot of things dealing with mental health, a lot of people try to deal with it alone, and you don't have to. Another big portion of what I do is
just a minute. We get ready to take a hold it. Don't go nowhere. You're not going anywhere. We get ready to take another quick commercial break. So don't go anywhere. We still got Calvin. So stay tuned. We'll be Access, Representation, and Solutions. You're watching Americana. All right, everybody. Hello out there in social media world. Thank you again for staying with us for commercial break. You are hearing from Calvin. We are talking about mental health all day today because we want you to understand the very importance of you having a voice in a place where it seems like you internalize everything. And today is Youth Mental Health Day. The CDC says nearly half of high school students feel persistently sad or hopeless. Half. We post about awareness, we talk about stigma, but awareness without action is just noise. So are we preparing this generation to rise above or just to survive? I want you to think about that because we need our youth to thrive out here in this world today with everything that's going on. So let's get back to the show. And remember, let's clear our minds. Let's get the help that we need. Thank you for tuning in. All right, everyone, welcome back to Americana. So as we said, we have Calvin with us. He's been with us the whole entire time talking about mental health, telling this story, talking about Life is Butter, which you can find him and we'll have him give that out at the end. But just wanted to share this. This is an alarming statistic. 50% of U.S. counties do not have a single practicing psychiatrist. That's alarming that when people do want to get help, they cannot find it. And there's so many executive orders that have recently come out that are coming against homelessness, mental health, and substance use. and it is basically crippling this community. So what do we need to do to shift this? This is the conversation today. As I said in the beginning, it's a very special episode because we want to talk about mental health because it's important to me, it's important to Calvin, and it should be important to you. So how do we ensure solutions? Now we're getting to the part about solutions, Calvin. As we sum this up, how do we ensure solutions for mental health are built with representation?
On me to have this space and come onto the show to share that information, making sure that we're continuing to spoon feed, even if we need to, this information to individuals that may be scared and individuals that are afraid of how they'll be looked at. So thank you again, once again, for having me on this show. I took the time to also look up, people should look into the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, and Mental Health America. These are other 3 examples of resources that people can reach out to. So even, if people can go door to door and knock on the doors and talk about AT&T fiber or new quantum fiber internet, people can go door to door and do a census and to gain information about what they may need in that community. As far as like, what would you need from us to bring us out to say, hey, yes, I'll take access to this help. We have to make it again like it's a public health crisis, and it's an issue.
And it is a public health crisis. It is an issue. And this is the thing, is so many individuals, and this is what, I want to have this conversation real fast because at one point, I want to say maybe last year or the beginning of this year, was such talk about whether people should be able to involuntarily commit someone else. What do you feel about that? Because that means that if my neighbor comes and be like, oh, I just think that something's wrong with them, and they can call, in the state of Florida, they have Baker Act, other states have different names for it. But what do you think about that? Like, do you think people, should be able to do that? Or do you think they need to be someone that has some kind of, contact someone else first before just, being able to involuntarily commit somebody to something?
Well, I do believe that should be something that people can utilize. But if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 9 times out of 10, law enforcement that comes in to follow up either with those wellness checks, the Baker Acting, right? They need that proper training and education on that matter. And then also cultural training, right?
Yes.
You want to make sure also that training is inclusive. You have to think about everybody and all types of backgrounds that they come from. So, yes, I do agree, but I would want to double down on making sure that it is also known that, the proper training to the proper people that will be carrying out those things know how to handle the type of person that they're going to come encounter with.
Thank you for that. Well, we're getting ready to come to a conclusion, but before we go, I want you to tell people where they can find you at so that they can continue to follow and get the tips, the information, the resources that's out there in about 30 seconds.
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at lifeisbuttermh. The MH is for mental health, and it's all one word. That is for the business page. My personal page is Griot.Cal. That is GRIOT.CAL. That is my personal page. And also www.lifeisbutter.com, which will also have all of the same handles on there as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Calvin, for being with us on Americana Day. That's a wrap for today and for this week on Americana. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday, same time, same place, only on AFRO TV. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep showing up. God bless you.